but the transition from playing sports to real life was a real transition,
Yeah.
and primarily because you know you have your mindset on playing pro.
Yeah.
You in a real sense, you kind of have to put all your eggs in one basket if you're going to play at that level. And so, because I had all my eggs in the basket of going pro, then what I realized is that when I didn't get signed with the Buffalo Bills, what I realized is that I didn't have a plan B.
Mm.
And so that made it really difficult because I hated.
94, 94, it is more than 94. This is more than 94. Yeah, this more than 94. 90, more than 94. Yeah.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of More Than 94, where former athletes redefine success. Today's guest, we have Brandon Kennedy. He's from Tyler, Texas. He went to the University of Arkansas from 2002 to 2005. He was a star fullback. He was a team captain there, and he won the Bruce Mitchell Award while playing at University of Arkansas. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thank you so much for having me, sis. What a privilege. I've heard some good things about what you got going on. So thank you for the invite.
Well, thanks for coming on. So first, I want to just tell you like the gist of the podcast. So basically, I want to highlight the stories of people that went professional in something other than sports after you got done playing collegiate for the most part. Um, I've interviewed people a little. They've played a little bit overseas, but basically we're gonna or play professional. But we want to. I like to highlight the stories that like they didn't go or what they did after, because I feel like we hear enough about professional athletes after they get done playing sports and not necessarily what happened to those people that they could have went professional, they just decided not to and went, and became great in something else. And so
Right.
I feel like we don't hear enough of those stories. And I feel like that most of the people that you went to school with and I went to school with are going to be normal people. They're not going to be
Right.
professional athletes. And I feel like we don't
Correct.
hear enough of those stories. And so that's the gist of the podcast.
Yeah, such a dope concept. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so the first question is, I ask everybody is, how did you even get started in sports? Like from the beginning.
Oh, so from the beginning, it's interesting. I have a sports family. So
Okay.
my mom played basketball. My mom is 6'1",
Oh.
and so she was a hooper back in the day. She tells everybody. My mom suffers from Alzheimer's or dementia now, but one thing she remembers is those old basketball playing days. And so she tells my children all the time the night that she hit 62 points in a game.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this is back before the three-pointer.
Oh.
So, and your guards couldn't even cross half court. They could only bring the ball to half court, and then your post players played on the other end. So this way back in the day,
Oh yeah,
right?
that is way back.
And so, right. So for mom to go for 60, 62 points in a game was really doing something. She was the only person in East Texas with a jump shot.
Yeah.
Everybody else was set shooters. She had a jump shot, right? So came from her. My dad was a baseball player. Then my sister went to college as well to play volleyball. She played at Texas Southern University. And then I took my mom's genes and so had some athleticism. And so I took the football and baseball route. Baseball was my first love, and then but I had the scholarship offers in football, so I went that route.
Okay. Okay. I didn't.
So
I didn't know. I didn't know you had a sister that played sports.
yeah,
So that's new.
yeah, yeah.
So like, walk us through like the time that you figured out that you were good enough to go play collegiate in the University of Arkansas, the SEC.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So my sophomore year, so uh, back in 2000, I graduated high school 2002.
Okay.
My sophomore year in high school, I had the privilege to get moved up to varsity as a sophomore, which was a big, big deal at my high school. And so I was one of two guys that got moved up to varsity. Well, my sophomore year, about mid-year, I started to have a little bit of success. Even as a young player
Yeah.
who, the bullets were flying fast, but I had a little bit of success. And so, really, the tail end of my junior year is where I started making all district, started getting letters from schools because of my size and speed and all that. So, it was at that time I was like, okay, wait a minute, I can actually make something out of football or out of sports. So, I would say at the tail end of my junior year is kind of
Okay.
when it clicked and when I knew.
Okay. Okay. So, but like going into it, you were just playing. You didn't necessarily
I just,
know you was going to go to
right.
college.
Right, you know how we do. We just play the game because we love it, and
Yeah.
when you're a youngster, you're playing sports at its purest form, right?
Yeah.
You just play the game because you are imitating the Deion Sanders or baseball. I was imitating the Ken Griffey Juniors of my day, and so I just wanted to play it because I loved it, and then I just so happened to be decent in it, and so it was for the love of the game for sure.
Yeah. And so then you get to Arkansas. So like kind of tell us like what success and stuff you had at Arkansas. I mean, like I know you said fullback. Do they even is that even a position anymore, really?
No, it's not. They have phased us out. We
Yeah.
are we are dinosaurs in the game of football. So my senior year of high school, I was running back. So my junior senior year, I was running back in high school, and so I was able to get my looks from colleges by playing
Running.
running back in
Oh,
high
okay.
school.
Gotcha.
I had I had offers from A&M, TCU, and Arkansas. And so when I decided to go play in the SEC, my head coach came to me. He said, "Hey, listen to me. I just want to shoot you straight." He said, "If you go play in the SEC, you are not fast enough to play running back in that league." I was
Mm.
a high 4.5 guy,
Yeah.
4.58, 4.59. He said, "So if you go play in the SEC, more than likely you're gonna play fullback." I
Mm.
said, "That's cool. I just want to go to the SEC because I want to play against Georgia, LSU, Florida. I want to play against those guys, the top competition." And so I decided to go to go play in the SEC at Arkansas. And then my freshman year, I was one of three guys that did not get redshirted. So I played as a freshman, albeit mostly special teams.
Yeah.
I would get in on some plays, but I started to play as a freshman, and so it started pretty early at U of A.
Okay. Okay. And so like when basically getting the guts of the podcast. So like when you got done with college,
Yeah.
talk about that transition. Was it hard? Was it hard to put down because you're no longer in that environment? How was that
Yeah.
transition for you?
I would say it's been the hardest transition of my entire life.
Yeah.
Right, high school, for example, you go from high school to college. There is the transition, right? You
Mm-hmm.
go from mom and dad, kind of taking care, being your caretakers. Mom may bam on the door in the morning when it's time to get up for school and say, "Hey, you oversleeping? You gotta get up and go to school." If you push the snooze button on your alarm clock,
Yeah.
you got some built-in accountability. Well, when you get to college, you know how it is. If you oversleep, you just miss class, right?
Yeah.
And you
Mm-hmm.
look up, you done missed 4 or 5 classes, and now you behind the eight ball trying to figure it out, right? So that was a transition in and of itself to kind of be on your own and figure it out. But the transition from playing sports to real life was a real transition,
Yeah.
and primarily because you know you have your mindset on playing pro.
Yeah.
You in a real sense, you kind of have to put all your eggs in one basket if you're going to play at that level. You can't be halfway in, halfway out.
Yeah.
And some people may figure it out, but I found that to be very difficult, right? And so because I had all my eggs in the basket of going pro, then what I realized is that when I didn't get signed with the Buffalo Bills, what I realized is that I didn't have a plan B.
Mm.
And so that made it really difficult because I hated school. I
Yeah.
love sports, but hated school. So now I
Yeah.
got to go back to school, get my degree so that I can go get one of these jobs that I've heard people talk about, but I had never considered
Yeah.
because it was football or bust for me, right?
Yeah.
And so that transition was difficult. And then lastly, I would say when I would get angry or frustrated in football, the game of football, I can go take that out in practice on a teammate or on an opponent.
Yeah.
That so I really lacked some self control, um, but when I transitioned to real life and I no longer had that physical outlet to be
Yeah.
able to go and punish somebody physically
Yeah.
on a football field, I had to now learn how to channel that energy into thinking strategically, right? How do I navigate these adult conversations or business conversations
Yeah.
without flying off the handle and being able to handle your business so that you can make moves and provide for your family? That was really, really difficult for me,
Yeah.
for sure.
So what did you transition into when you left and when the bill situation didn't work out? So
Yeah.
what was next for you?
Yeah. So it's funny. I went back to school, finished my degree. I began working at the Boys and Girls Club. Worked for a company. Worked for Coca-Cola. Worked for UPS. I was one of the guys that slung the boxes on the conveyor belt. Did that for a time. Worked at after-school program with kids, and then I began training athletes,
Hmm.
which felt more like at home for me, right?
Yeah.
And then I end up following a call to ministry and did that for 11 years. So I started out in sports ministry, like doing upward sports for kids,
Yeah.
and then transitioned into kind of some adult ministry stuff and did that for 11 years. When I transitioned out of ministry, I went into construction. And so construction is where I've been, for the last several years. And it has become a real, real passion, for sure. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And so in those jobs you had, was there things that did translate over for you? Because I feel like sometimes I've seen it like guys are it's hard for that transition more than girls
Yeah,
as far as like the same skills that like I use in basketball, some of that I can use a majority of that stuff in real life. So like in
right.
within those jobs that you've had and even up and now into construction, like what kind of things that you were able to take from football and apply it to just today and what in the
Yeah,
jobs that you took?
absolutely. Well, when you step back and think about it, there are actually a lot of transferable skills from sports, whether it's a court or a field, to real life.
Yeah.
But so you have to do the introspective work. Things like obviously teamwork,
Yeah.
grit,
Yeah.
hard work, discipline, the ability to problem solve. How do you solve problems on your feet? How do you do that quickly? Well, the truth is, sports helps you do all of those things.
Yeah.
When you do the introspective work and you realize I've been doing this since I was young.
Effortless.
I'm not new to this.
Yeah.
And so even when I began in my adult life, when I began to fill out applications and I start going back to think, well, what have I actually done? What skills do I actually have? It was at that time that I realized a lot of the skills that I had acquired through sports were
Yeah.
actually transferable skills to the work world.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of parallels to life in sports for sure.
And which ones do you which ones specifically do you see yourself using the most from sports? Like, can you name a few?
Absolutely. From a leadership standpoint, I would say the management of people.
Yeah.
In construction, I have a project management company. And so I am constantly managing people. I'm managing subcontractors,
Yeah.
vendors, I'm managing expectations. I'm always in management mode. Well, when I was a team captain on the team, I was managing the temperament of the team. I
Yeah.
was I was managing the negative or positive talk within the team, within the locker room. I've been managing people. I could tell when people were tired on the team from practice and tour
Mm.
days. So I would go to the coach and say, "Hey, coach, I feel like we're tired. What do you think about doing a one a day tomorrow? Help us recover, and then we'll come back and give you everything we got on Thursday or Friday, right?" And
Yeah.
so it's those same transferable skills that I'm using now. I've been cultivating those skills for the last 20 years, right? And
Yeah.
so that's one out of many,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's definitely some parallel there.
Yeah. So with that, like, what are some of the struggles? Like, so I always say, like, when you working in the real world, but like everybody is not an athlete, right? And so
Right.
sometimes they don't understand what it
Mm,
means to be a part of a team. And so,
right.
what kind of struggles have you faced in those kind of situations where people just don't understand because they've never been a part of a team or either played a sport or
Yeah.
a team sport? And like, what was like the most frustrating thing?
Yeah, two things come to mind initially. Two
Yeah.
things. Number one, is tenacity. A lot of people that have not played sports,
Yeah.
they struggle when people have tenacity
Mm-hmm.
about a particular work, right? And so what you realize is that people who don't really have a background in sport, they may have not been coached hard by coaches.
Yeah.
And so they may struggle with that. They may
Mm-hmm.
struggle with being in an environment where it's intense, um, and knowing how to operate in those environments. Number two, I would say the aspect of accountability. I feel like what sports forces you to do is to
Yeah.
be accountable for yourself, your actions, your behaviors.
Yeah.
Sports prompts that, right? It's what
Yeah.
I'm teaching my kids all the time. You have to be accountable.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear the excuses, right? And so I've seen that be missing from the work world as well, where there's a lot of blame shifting that takes place. There's a lack of accountability. Well, when you start identifying who those people are that have the most complaints
Yeah.
or pass blame the most, what I'm realizing is those people were never in team environments in
Yeah.
which they had to own their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen it clearly in the work world for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
that is, I always say, like, most of the time when somebody's not a part of a team or don't understand, like, you get further with a team, even though, and everybody
Right.
gets to eat, and not necessarily looking
Right.
out for just yourself. Even though I know
Right.
I'm worried about my paycheck only, and whatever like that
Right.
may be. But most of those
Right.
people don't know, like, if we all work together, everybody's going to benefit, not just you. And
Yeah.
everybody's work will get done if you just operate as a
Right.
team. And sometimes that's lost, I feel like, in corporate America, because everybody just out to, like, for them. And I'm worried about my paycheck and going home. Such kind of
Right.
kind of. So
Right.
that, for me, that's been tough, because I'm like, bro, like, you'll still get your paycheck, but you just got to work more, better as a team.
Right.
And so,
Right. Well,
um,
it's true. It's true. Let me piggyback on that 1 second. It's also true on the flip side when you have a crappy leader.
yeah,
I've had crappy coaches, and when I say crappy, what I mean is they just had poor leadership skills.
yeah,
They did not have the ability to rally troops. They did not have the ability to get people to rally around one common vision.
mm-hmm,
They allowed certain things to take place that they shouldn't have. They didn't root out those things, and as a result, you had infighting and all kind of things, right?
right, yeah,
And so I think you even learn that. How do I operate under poor leadership? I think that's also a skill, right?
yeah, that is a
That
skill,
I've had to come across over the course of time that has helped me in my adult life. When I've had poor leadership,
for
how do
sure.
I operate under that umbrella and rule, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it's true on both sides.
Yeah, that is true. Like, you learn, you may be in poor leadership, but you still figure out, okay, well, I learned this, even though the leadership wasn't very good. You can still walk away of what not to do. And
Right.
if you're ever put in a position of leadership. So both,
Right.
and you
For
coaches
sure.
and corporate, like, both. And so,
Right.
yeah, that's good. So,
Yeah.
what do you think, like, when you look back on that transition, what do you think you should, like, how do you think, what would you have done to be kind of like better equipped for that
Mm.
transition? Do you think there's anything that,
Mm.
like, if I would have done this, or if the university, because when in sports, like, especially at the Division I level, is no time to, like, you're not worried about trying to go say you in business school, like, oh, I need to go to, like, you don't have time sometimes to go
Right.
do those extra things like regular students can do, because you're either at practice, at a game,
Right.
and then if you do have time, honestly, it's just like, I'm going to take a nap. Like, I'm not trying to go do nothing else, because
Right.
tomorrow I got
Right.
this same routine I got to go back doing again. So, like,
Right.
what do you think are, like, some things that maybe you gonna put in place yourself just to tough it
Right.
out and not go take a nap, or like what, like, to
Yeah.
better help you transition and make that transition out of college?
Yeah, I would say this. There's no aspect of my adult life where I can afford to be singularly focused. I got to be a husband. Oh, no. Let me say it this way. I get to be a husband
Yeah,
and a father.
yeah,
I get to be a father and a business owner, right? There are multiple things going on at one time.
yeah,
And I felt like with football, I was singularly focused on that end goal.
Yeah.
while not considering anything else that was a possibility. What if you don't make it? Are you networking with other people? Who do you know that can get you a job? What are your skill set? How do they translate to working at Walmart or JB Hunt or Tyson Foods, which were the big three
Where?
companies up in
Yeah.
Northwest Arkansas that a lot of people transitioned to? That didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
And if I could go back, I would, in the summer times, I would do some internships.
Yeah.
I would go to some of the events that they were having on campus where you can hobnob and get to know people. I would do some of those things. And while I now looking back on it in retrospect, I don't believe that would have affected my workouts,
No.
my training regiments. I still would have been at every practice, every meeting, every game.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but at that time, I thought just focus on this because this is where you're going. So, if I could go back and change anything, it would have been that I would have did more networking and not be so singularly focused.
Yeah, and also, and when you say that, like, I didn't have you obviously you wanted to go to the league, but I wasn't planning on going to the league, but I also wasn't thinking about, like, nobody was, not saying
Right.
it was anybody else's responsibility, but it was nothing in place to be like, bro, you probably need to do this in the summertime or do
Yeah.
this internship in the summertime. Because I'm just thinking, like, I got an accounting degree, surely I can get a job by the time I leave this place, not knowing that
Right.
when you leave here, they're gonna be like, oh, what's your experience? And I'm like, I have
Right.
none. I've been in college. What you mean what my
None.
experience is?
Right.
4 years in the classroom is my experience.
Right.
And so,
Right.
like,
And how does that help us? How does that translate? You got book sense, but how do you connect the dots in the real world when the bullets are flying?
yeah,
You have no reps at this.
no,
No reps.
no,
And so I just don't see it in our adult lives. Like we don't, there's nothing we're doing where we're only focused on said thing. Nowhere.
no, no.
And so I feel like they should help us in colleges on sports teams or any other place. I think they should address those type of things, helping you to know how to balance time block, manage your time well, so that you can consider multiple things at one
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And we were
Yeah,
talking about, it was a wide receiver that played at Arkansas State last episode, but he was even saying, like, it wasn't even like the time block though, like, because our time was already accounted for, so it ain't like we
that's
had to
true.
do a lot of time management. To your point, we didn't have
Right.
to do a lot of time management because
That's true.
we were already told we got to be this place. Our time was already blocked.
That's very true.
And
For
so, like,
that one thing, yes.
yeah.
Right.
So, like, our
Right.
time was blocked. So when you get out, unless you were already a person that's, just good with that and know how to block your time, but like that still doesn't prepare you to do time blocking out because it's already done for you. You actually, when you
So
get
true.
in real life, you got to do the time blocking. Ain't nobody out there
Right.
making your schedule
Right.
for you like they made our
Right.
schedule for us. Like our
Correct.
time was accounted for, so we did literally. And it was more to it as being a Division I athlete. Like it's hard work, but like at the same time, like half the battle was just showing up to those things that they told us to show up to, and do it on
So
time,
true.
and then and go to class. And so we're kind of like, we're still, even though we're not at home, we are still, as an athlete and at that level, I feel like it's still a level of like holding my hand in a sense.
Right.
Because they're telling
It's
us
true.
where to be and how to, and then they got people
Yeah.
checking on you in class
Yep.
to make sure you're going
Yep.
to class. So it's still a level of your hand being held,
Yep.
but you're just doing that one thing because they want to make sure you stay eligible so they can keep their job, and et cetera, et
Right.
cetera.
Right.
And so, like, I think you're right, that transition, like having those times and just knowing, like, in the summertime, it wouldn't have, but there was nothing in place for us to think about that, because we were, we were 18, 17 years old. Like, I'm worried about the next nap I'm about to get.
Right.
I'm never. And so
It's
in the
very
summertime,
true.
even in the workout,
Yeah.
and we have, and to think about it, we did have a lot of time in the summer because we just had summer workouts. But
Right.
again, it was like nobody mentioned, like, oh, you might want to just try something while you have this downtime, because we not thinking about that. We just thinking about, we got
Yeah.
this workout and I'm just gonna be chilling, like,
Right.
until the next
Or
workout.
people went home. We had a
What-
semester
yeah.
a semester in the summer where people could go home
Home.
because they were homesick. I never went home because I
Yeah.
always wanted to work out. I always
Yeah.
wanted to train. But what if I would have stayed at school, took classes in the morning, worked out, and went to go work, went to a job, part-time job, so I
Right.
could learn how our meeting structured. What's
Yeah.
the expectation in a meeting?
Yeah.
How do you correspond with coach? Like we could have done so many more things, but we idolized idle time
Yeah.
when we were playing sports. We
Yeah.
made it an idol.
Yeah.
I'ma just go relax and take a
Next.
nap and chill and play the game. Like we idolize idle time is what
Yeah.
I feel like we did.
No, for
It's so
sure. I
true. And
feel
I feel
like
like it hurt
I
us.
miss my naps. I ain't got naps
right,
like that
right,
since college. Like that was like
right.
wow. And so
It's true.
for sure.
Mhm.
And so it's
Yeah,
tough. And I didn't know it was still such a gap. Like that's still a gap there. It's still a gap to where
yeah,
athletes are still having a hard time to transition and out as much, information there is now out there. It's still
right.
a thing. And I'm just like it's wild to me that there's no, and I'm sure there's probably programs out there, but it's not like
Right.
a thing. It's not real prominent, like, because people are still struggling with it. Like even just putting down,
Hmm.
and it's more the identity, like just putting down that identity of
That's
not
true.
being in a sport. Like you were that person.
Right.
Like everybody knew your name, and like you
Yep.
get to work. Don't nobody care that you play basketball or football or whatever. Like
It's
nobody
very true.
cares that your name, that you won this award while you were there. Like
Yeah.
nobody care. Like, and if they do, if they know you, they'll care for. Maybe they might think it's a big deal. Like, oh, she coming to work for us, but that
Right.
fades away. That fades away
It
within a
fades.
couple.
It fades so quickly. That part and the truth is when you play in the arena, whether it's a field or a diamond or a court, you are playing for the applause of people.
Yeah,
Whether it's the applause of your teammates, the applause of your coach, the applause of the crowd, right? And so when you talk about that identity piece, you're spot on, because if I have been doing something and receiving an immediate applause
yeah,
based on my ability to make a shot or hit a ball or run somebody over,
yeah,
there's an immediate response. Well, what happens when your congratulations or your attaboys are delayed or
yeah,
they never happen in the work world?
yeah,
How do you then feel appreciated? You haven't trained yourself to appreciate what you do as the standard of just what you do, and give
yeah.
your own self the praise and attaboys and pats on the backs that you. I really, really struggle with that.
And so
With
I asked,
I
so
really
why do
struggle
you
with that.
think? I feel like, and I could be, I'm probably generalizing, but like I feel like
Mhm.
boys struggle with that more than girls, and
Interesting.
I don't know what it is, because I mean I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. I feel like we both can struggle with identity piece for sure.
Yeah.
Like like I've, people back home know you probably Brandon football. That's all they know.
Right.
And me, like, oh, Nene,
Right.
she's all. If they don't know nothing else, we seen her at the court with a basketball in her hand.
Right. Right.
But like, why do I feel like boys struggle more with it? Like the identity and putting it down. Like it's over. Like sports
Yeah.
is over, and I've not, like, I don't know if it's like is it a praise thing, or is it? I don't think it's strictly identity. I think a lot of
Yeah.
it is, but I hadn't figured out like
Yeah.
why boys so much more than girls. I feel like.
I think that's a whole. I think it's a much deeper issue. I think one aspect of it is there's a lot of fatherless homes
Yeah.
where the adulation and the applause and the praise from a male figure is absent a lot, right?
Yeah.
You see this a lot in the black home, but it's not just in black America where fatherlessness is. It happens across the board. I think that's one direction. I think two, I think it's tied to personality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have a people pleaser personality. And so that tends to be, I think, put it this way. I think people pleasing is on a spectrum.
Yeah.
I think there are some that care a whole lot about what people think.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there are people who care little about what people think. All of us care about what others think. If that was the case, we wouldn't bathe, brush our teeth, buy fresh shoes, none of that, right?
Yeah, you care a little
Drive
bit.
a nice car, right?
Right.
We all care, but it's a spectrum to the degree of how much.
Yeah.
And if I'm on a spectrum, my button is past the halfway mark, not at the end of the spectrum, but it's somewhere between the end and the middle.
Yeah.
And so I really have to work to be able to give myself the words that I need as opposed to searching for it externally. What I found is it's intrinsic, it's internal, it's not to be external. It's what God thinks of me, what I think of myself based on who I am in God.
Yeah.
That's really my identity.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that at 20 years old, 21 years old,
Yeah.
25 years old.
Yeah.
That's a relatively recent discovery of mine as I'm doing my own inner work, own therapy work, finding like what's my true identity? What is it rooted in? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you're a people pleaser, I
Yeah.
know a lot of dudes won't admit that they like to people please. I'm a people pleaser personality,
Yeah.
and I've had to learn how to dial that back and how to combat that to bring it under God's leadership.
Yeah.
And so I think it's in part tied to that
Yeah.
personality as well. So great question though.
Yeah, because I'm just like I've run into like the guys that I've interviewed. It's like a it's tied for sure to the identity or thinking that they couldn't do nothing else other than play the sport or they weren't as good as
Right.
in anything else other than that sport. And it's a few girls
Right.
that I've played with the same way. But it makes a difference though. It makes a difference if you have sometimes a 2-parent household, you know, that father
Mm-hmm.
there. And I had it. And so that's why I was like putting basketball down was never like, oh my God, like
Right.
I never struggled with that because I'm like, I'm good at other stuff. Like
Right.
I will never get
Right.
that competitiveness again, like in that basketball competing. I'll never see that outside of basketball, like that kind of that
Right.
level of competitiveness.
Right.
But putting it down, I was like, all right, I just gonna have to put this down. I
Right.
have to figure out
Right.
something else. But it's
It's
just
true.
I
Yeah.
feel like guys just like or hold on, and it's athletes out there that play it afterwards too long. I'm like, bro, you can't
Right.
be 40 years old and come back and looking for a job and be like, well, I played 6 years overseas. And what can you do for this job? Like that has
Right.
I
Right.
get those skills are
Yeah.
transferable, but what can you do at this job? And you 40 years old looking for a job, it's just like
Yeah.
again, we don't want to kill nobody's dreams, but like
Right.
when do you hang it up sometimes? I
Yeah,
guess.
that was a real conversation for me, asking that question. See, I saw guys that finished before me at Arkansas that were really good athletes, but
Yeah.
for some reason they didn't catch on with a team.
Yeah.
And so at every year at Pro Day, when we had the Pro Day when all the scouts would come in for Pro Day, you would see these guys that had played 3, 4, 5 years before you. And
Still
they're
trying out.
working out for the scouts again. And I remember thinking the year in 2005 when I was working out for the scouts at Pro Day, I said I will not be that guy that 3, 4 years down the road I'm in
Yeah.
here working out for scouts. I gotta go make me some money somewhere.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gotta go to somebody's job and figure it out. But
Yeah.
I'm not gonna chase football for the next 5 years. I'm just
Yeah.
not gonna do it.
Yeah.
But that's not everybody's mindset, and no shade to them.
All right.
I get it. They think they are right on the cusp, and some of them may be, but I feel like it's a long shot. I think you maybe give it a year, maybe 2 years max after your initial senior year or the final year.
Yes.
And if you ain't caught on by then, you got to get in the work world because you're already delayed.
Yeah.
You got to think there are people who went to school with you that didn't play sports. They were interning every summer.
Yeah. Every summer.
They already built connections.
Yep.
They already made an impression on somebody, right?
Yeah.
So you done played sports for 4 years. If you redshirted 5 years, if you got a medical red shirt, 6 years.
Yeah.
So you got a 6 year gap from high school till you finish, and now you're going into the work world. And these people 4 years ahead of you, 3 years ahead of you.
Yeah.
It makes a difference on how fast you're able to get to a level within a company that you feel like is sustainable for you and your family and your lifestyle. I just think it all matters.
Yeah. Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
It does. And so I think I'll backtrack just a little bit, but like
Mhm.
through it all, like what has I think we talked about it a little bit, but how did you overcome some of the struggles throughout this, from transitioning from now and then just up until now? Like what are some of the
Yeah.
things that you transition like in this transition period that you struggle with and like overcoming that, and like how did you overcome some of those things that you may struggle with, whether
Yeah.
that's personal in the workforce, whatever.
Yeah, great question. For me, 2006, when I got the news that I didn't get drafted or go get picked to be a free agent anywhere,
Yeah.
and also after I worked out for Buffalo and thought I would make the team and didn't make the team, it was the lowest part of my life.
Mm.
So much so that suicide was a real thought. And I don't say this next part to be some, uber religious scholar, but for me personally, it was only Christ.
Yeah.
2007, I discovered a church. My girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, we walked into a church, a random church. It was a beautiful church, but we went and this pastor was preaching the gospel. At that time, I didn't know what the gospel was. I had no idea what that
Yeah.
was. But all I knew is whatever he's preaching, I need in my life.
Yeah.
I want this Jesus that he's talking about, right? And so when I gave my life to the Lord in 2007, that really helped me to make a transition. Now, did me giving my life to Christ solve every issue that was going on to me? Absolutely not. Now, I
Right.
had been forgiven of all the foolishness that I had done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the foolishness that I would do going forward, because Lord knows I bumped my head, right? But that helped me to transition. It gave me purpose. It gave me meaning. It gave me a passion again. Because now I'm learning about something that I don't know. Now I'm building relationships with people in the church that I never would have otherwise built relationships with. And they have interests that now piques my interest. And so that really helped my transition. So for me personally, it was giving my life to Christ in 2007. I was at the lowest point of my life.
Yeah.
What am I living for? Again, that identity piece, right? If
Yeah.
football is done, what am I going to live for?
Right.
And so it's Christ that began to restore and breathe in me and whisper in me identity. No, you still have a purpose. I
Yeah.
still have a plan for your life. So for me, it was Christ.
Dang. And so, and not to just be like, but I'm just curious though.
Mm-hmm.
It's identity, but like to absolute, like what drove you to just be like, I can't play football, so let's just end it here. Like
Right.
what? Because I'm trying, like for me,
Right.
I'm trying to wrap my head.
Right.
I'm like, because you can't play a catch a ball, like
a catch a ball. Right. You so right. And see, it's funny because in retrospect, it sounds so silly, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. But when this is the only thing that you focused on,
Yeah.
and it's only this is my only way to eat and provide for a family
Yeah.
and to have a life, the life that
Gotcha.
I saw in my mind, for that not to work and for you not to have ever thought about any other thing,
Yeah.
what in the world are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's I'm trying to think of parallels. I guess it's kind of like almost like that first love that a girl has, maybe in high school.
Yeah.
And she head over heels for this dude.
Yeah.
And the other dude's been shooting their shots and she ain't studying none of them dudes, right?
Yeah.
It's all about this dude.
Yeah.
Something happens, they break up, sits in a depression for 6 months.
Yeah.
All her hair, she don't comb her hair no more. She ain't coming to school half the time. She depressed, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the older person, the mom or the dad or the friend or the relative, they say, now, this girl got her whole life ahead of her.
Yeah.
Why would she be this head over heels about this little nappy head boy? Why would she be that? And so it's a similar idea.
Yeah.
It's a similar parallel, right? Now looking back on them, like, you had your whole life in front of you.
Yeah.
Why would you be thinking suicide as if God didn't have a plan for you?
Right.
Over a stupid ball that you throw up and catch and tackle people and grunt and you're led by your ego and machoism?
Yeah.
You're going to kill yourself over that?
Mm.
But it's real. And I believe it happens more than we think it does because of that whole identity piece. And so it's a real deal. It's a hard transition.
Yeah, and then while you were talking, I'm just thinking like, and being a guy, and then you like, that's the only way you see yourself providing is that's also probably that like that's the only way I know how to provide for my family. And if you didn't come from much, like I can take care of everybody in a sense. And so and
it's
so
true.
now that
and a lot of that has to
done.
do with me out running my mouth.
Yeah.
Telling everybody I'm going pro. When I go pro, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna hook you. Some of that self-inflicted. Now let's keep ourselves accountable now. So some of that, we don't talk about that. But that's a part of it too. Putting these expectations on yourself. Right.
Yeah. And so like the only way and I can relate only a little, not like the suicide part, but like when I got injured, because you have so my thing is like expectations, right? Not that I wanted to go to the WNBA. It was just like, when I'm going to this particular college because I knew I could play. Then I get there and I have a season-ending injury. So now my expectations is like, bro, I could be out here killing these folks. Then I get that torn ACL, come back, tear it again. I'm just like, what do I do? And so in my mind, I'm like, what am I possibly doing wrong? Like, what? And so it clicked for me, like, I got to think about something different, because I can't keep getting hurt and thinking that, and not even because it was like, and I guess if I had the opportunity to go professional, I probably would have just done it just because. But it was more of like, I wanted to be like that girl in college, because I was that girl going, getting there. Right. I've been inducted to my high school Hall of Fame. Like, what I wanted to be inducted into at Arkansas State. And so I'm like, all those are chatter. Like, now it's just like, now I'm just out here trash. Like this.
Yeah, it makes sense. I never thought about injuries being a blessing, but only in retrospect do we see it as that. But it was really a blessing. God in his sovereignty using even an injury to help prepare you for life. So it's almost, from the sounds of it, sounds like it lessened your expectation. So now you can begin to kind of make the pivot and the transition if this don't work out.
Yeah.
Well, I never would have thought about it from that perspective. And this is why it's good to have these conversations. So if something happens to my babies in college or high school, I can now pull from your story and say, no, I've seen this before. I've heard this before.
Yeah.
It may not be the worst thing you've ever gone through. It may be a blessing that you don't even see. Right. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. That's a really, really good perspective, that it helped to taper your expectations.
Yeah. It's like bringing me
getting injured.
Yeah. Bring me down. Because I probably wouldn't have gone. And honestly, I say, if I didn't get injured, I probably would have. And if I didn't get injured, I probably would have been like really good, like better than I was, and had all the accolades. I probably never got married. I probably would have went on and maybe played overseas or whatever. Yep. And so I would have never even thought about anything else. And even though like I know I could probably go do something else, but I'm just like, if this worked, then I'm not gonna. If it ain't broke, there ain't no point in fixing it. So if it's gonna work, I'm gonna ride this thing out until it ain't gonna ride.
Right. It's true. It's really true. Yeah, so, that's real.
And like, I'm just like, yeah. So injury. It was for me. It was injury. I'm just like, oh, let me. Like, at any point, basketball could stop, and that's what it was for me. Like, at any point, anything could happen, and I can't bounce a ball ever again. So
I never had that thought, because I was never injured.
That's
by
good.
The grace of God, of course, but I was never injured, so I never had to sit and reflect and do introspective work. I feel like that was a blessing.
And so I had never been injured, and it was like weird, because I had never been injured until I got to college, and I'm just like, wait till I get all the way to college to start getting injured. Like, I was like, what? I've been playing my whole life, I ain't never been injured, and then I get to college. I'm like, what is this?
And those were devastating injuries. You're talking about season ending. ACL. Nobody talks about the mental
aspect of coming back
that you have to go. Yeah.
And even coming back, like, you want to be timid, and like, you don't want to re-injure it, even though it's less likely to re-injure it. And they tell you all the stats. It's like, they told me all the stats. Like, you more likely to injure the other one than the same one. I'm telling, and I'm over here arguing with them. It's torn again. Like, I literally had to argue with these folks. Like, I'm sitting here telling y'all it's torn again. They say, it's statistically, couldn't happen. Torn again.
Wow. The same one.
Same one. And I was like, you know what? Wow. At that point, Brandon, I was like, I don't even care no more. I put that brace back on, and I played a whole season with a torn ACL. I said, I'm not finna I'm not sitting out again. I'm not finna be here for 7 years because I'm trying to play basketball. No.
Right.
And so, it probably was.
But it hurt your ability to play, because you knew you could play at a different level.
Yeah, and just for me, myself. Yeah, for myself, just to.
For sure.
Yeah, it just like that would crush me the most. Like, I know how capable I am. I know how good I am, and this is holding me back. And that was probably the most devastating thing. Not because I wanted to go professional. It was just like, I know my ability and I can't reach it because this stupid knee is holding me back.
Right.
And
Yeah, I bet that was tough.
tough. That
Yeah,
was tough.
that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So wrapping it up here, what are some things that if nobody hears anything else in this podcast, what are like two things that you want people to know and hear
Yeah.
what you said throughout this whole episode?
Yeah, I think if I could sum up, I think if I could sum up everything that has been said here that I've said on my part, I could probably sum it up in my life's mantra.
Yeah.
And my life's mantra is to stay low, keep firing.
Yeah.
And here's what that means from a practical standpoint. The way that you stay low is to chase humility.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say chase humility is because we have the propensity as humans to really rise up and boast in ourselves and lead with our pride. Even if we are able to beat our pride down, let us have an accomplishment. Let us
Yeah.
have an achievement. Let us make a little more money than my friends make. Our chest, our ego starts to rise up again.
Yeah.
So if you can chase humility
Mm-hmm.
and be persistent and consistent in whatever thing or direction or career path that you're in, I think success will come. I think success, the word success is very relative. Whatever you deem success to be. I
Yep.
think if you'll chase humility and stay consistent and persistent in whatever it is that you do, I think you'll arrive at that destination or you'll make an impact on the way to that destination as well. And so stay low, keep firing, which is the mantra that I live by, but I would encourage everybody listening or that will listen to that,
Yeah.
adopt that mindset, that mind frame. And I think what you'll see is you'll become an attractive aroma to be around because
Mm-hmm.
of the humility that you strive for. Even if you are wrong, you're willing to say, I'm sorry I was wrong
Yeah.
because of the humility.
Yeah.
And if you'll be consistent and persistent, you'll do that in relationships. You'll do that in the workplace. You'll
Yep.
do all those things. And
Yep.
so I would leave with that
Yeah.
for
Yeah. How
sure.
you do? How you do one thing is how you do everything. That's what I say.
Right on. Right
And
on.
so when
Right
you,
on.
well, I got a question though. Like when you say when you when you talk about humility, how do you practice that?
Yeah.
How do you practice
I
humility?
think I'll give you a personal example. So at our house, at the Kennedy household, we have something we call Sunday night huddle. Been
Okay.
doing it for about 5 years now. It's where we meet on Sunday nights. We bring the kids in and we're just reflecting. Anybody got beef with each other in the family? Sunday night huddle is where we talk about it.
Yeah.
And we'll have a time where we call I got beef, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my oldest will say to her brother, I got beef with you. And he'll be like, why you got beef with me? And she'll explain, and he cannot interrupt her, right?
Yeah.
He got to listen to her, and then she got to respond. And then me and mom, we sitting there and we kind of referee in the deal to make sure each person hears each other. We reflect on the week that just passed. We reflect on the week that's coming up. And then sometimes we do a devotion. Sometimes we may sing. But then we put people in the middle as well. And so when we put you in the middle, we are giving you praise, honor, adulation, girls or boys. This is why you special. This is why you're really smart. I love when you did X, Y, Z for me.
Yeah.
Well, that also includes mom and dad.
Yeah.
What I've realized is that our Sunday night huddles, I have had to repent. I've had to ask for forgiveness to my children more times than I would like to admit
Yeah.
because of my tone,
Yeah.
because of my temperament, my facial expression, my lack of patience, right?
Yeah.
All of those things. I believe that if we want to teach our children accountability,
Mm-hmm.
we have to lay ourselves on the altar first.
Yeah.
Not sweeping stuff under the rug when it's the adult doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when the kids do it, we call them to the carpet and they gotta own their stuff. But you
Mm.
ain't owned nothing in 2 years.
Right.
Mama, daddy, why you don't never apologize? So you
That.
always right?
Yeah.
Right. And so because of that practice, that's one way that I'm able to stay humble or chase humility
Yeah.
is by owning my stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That's on me. That's my fault. And then apologizing, trying to be quick to apologize to my children, to my wife, It's not easy,
Mm-mm.
and there are times where I haven't done that. There are seasons where I haven't done that, but I feel like when I'm operating in my fullness,
Yeah.
that's a way that I can hold myself close to Christ. Keep my pride and my ego turned down.
Yeah.
But that sucker leap up from time to time now. It'll leap up on me now. But praise God for the Holy Spirit, and praise God for His Word
Yeah.
that we try to govern ourselves by to keep us grounded and keep us humble, if you
Yeah.
will. And
Yeah.
so
That's good.
I
Yeah,
would
because
say that.
I was when you said that about the kids, it was like growing up, it was just like you're
Right.
seeming not heard, but like, and not
Right.
our kids would be like, well, you made me feel sad. I'm like, made you
Right.
feel sad? Like, and it like having it, I'm like,
Right.
I've never in my
Right.
life told my mama she
Right.
made me feel sad. Like
Right.
that, what you
Right.
did, it made me feel sad. I'm like,
Right.
that was so that is new. Like
Mm-hmm.
for me to hear some,
Yeah.
like they're not, and that's just a
Right.
comfortability thing. And I'm glad you're
Correct.
comfortable enough to be
That's
like,
true.
you hurt my feelings, because I didn't have that comfortability that mama, you hurt my feelings. Like there was
Right.
no saying that, because it's like, I hurt your feelings. I didn't touch you. Like you didn't get no whooping. Like your feelings couldn't be hurt at our house. You just
Right.
had, if nobody touched you,
Get over it.
what you
Right.
crying for? And so
Right.
and so for me,
Right.
that's weird. It's not weird, but it's awkward because I've grown
Mm-hmm.
up. I had to be tough, 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 and then
Right.
I get kids, and it's like, what is this? Like I have to use. I like now. I gotta tap into my own emotions that I've never had to tap into,
Right.
because they're
Right.
like, "Mommy, you made me feel sad when you
Mm-hmm.
yelled at me." What?
Yep.
Like,
Yep. It's true. It's so true. It's so true. And you got two responses. We got two responses, and we don't always get it right.
no.
One response is I can lean into it and
Yeah.
figure out what did I do, why you feel the way you do, or I can take the other response, which comes more natural for me, and I'm
Yeah.
sure for other people too. Get on in that room and go on about your business and do what you're doing. Ain't nobody
Yeah.
hurt your feelings. Figure it out and get over it, right?
Yeah.
Ain't
Yeah.
nobody did nothing to you. That's
Yeah.
the second response.
For
And
sure.
so hopefully there's a good balance there. But I ain't always got it right. I
Yeah.
just haven't. I ain't
Yeah.
always got it right. But I'm trying to be more and more sensitive to that, because we tell them to tell us what you're feeling, what you're thinking.
Yeah.
But when they tell us something
And
that
you
we
blow.
can't justify in our own minds, we dismiss it.
Yeah.
And so we're actually doing the opposite of what we coaching and training and teaching them to do. And so that alone, that'll keep you on your knees asking God for
Yeah.
tenderness of heart. I promise you. Real
That's
talk.
I was
Yeah.
like, these kids, listen, they gonna make me get all in my
Right.
feelings.
Right. Yeah. For
Well,
sure.
what's last question? I hadn't done this in a while, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could do for football. I don't know if you have like a well, is because you got 11 people that play in football. I'm like, you're starting five,
Right.
but you don't have a starting five in football. Well, I guess
Yeah.
your top. What's your top 5 favorite players of all time in football? College, or pro.
Okay.
So you can mix them up.
Nobody. I don't know the last time somebody asked me this question.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I would have to start with Deion Sanders, number 1.
Oh, Deion, because he
go
been
in
on TV, because he didn't got
No, it ain't.
Yeah?
No,
Okay.
when I was a kid, when I was in elementary school,
Yeah.
do you know that I told people to call me Deion? I
Wow.
loved him that much. I wanted my name changed. He was that dude. You hear
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
I'm talking about. He influenced the coach. I started tying a bandana on my head like he did. I'm probably
Oh,
8,
okay.
9 years old.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
Okay.
Deion was that dude. Now he just resurfaced and he coaching and everybody talking about it now. But Deion been doing that since the early 90s.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I would say Deion 1. I would say LaDainian Tomlinson, number 2.
Okay.
Little kid. I mean, who was
I
a
remember
kid from
LaDainian.
Waco, Texas. I played running back. He wore number 5 in college at TCU. So I start wearing number 5 because of him. I considered TCU to go to TCU because he was there. So I would say LaDainian Tomlinson, number 2. Adrian Peterson, number 3.
Okay.
I would say you got to go with Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice at number 4, greatest receiver all time, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm rocking with the boy from Tyler, Texas, Pat Mahomes. Let's go.
Patrick
Tyler,
Mahomes is
Texas
from.
in here. Yes, he's from Tyler, Texas.
I didn't know he was from Tyler,
Tyler,
Texas.
Texas.
Where he go to school at?
Yeah. He went to White House, who
Oh,
was our rival. That was Chapel Hill High School. That was White House and Chapel Hill were rivals.
okay. I didn't know Patrick Mahomes was from Tyler, Texas.
Tyler, Texas. It's crazy.
He
Small
did
town
like
boy.
he might be from Tyler, Texas.
Hey, right. I know what you mean without you even saying it.
Adrian Peterson. Because Adrian Peterson was a running back, right? Or was he a fullback?
He was. He
was
a running back.
Okay, yeah.
He was running back.
Okay.
He's from Palestine. He's from East Texas too, right
Yeah,
out the street. We played Palestine.
all the athletes from Texas. All the football players from Texas.
It's a lot. Florida, Texas, and California is
Yep.
usually where you see a lot of them at.
Yeah.
And you have them sprinkled out throughout the Midwest. You have a handful of athletes that come out of there, but primarily the schools that's winning the national championships and the titles, they are coming from those three states.
Yeah.
Primarily.
Yeah. Texas.
So
is it Georgia? Yeah, something like that.
Georgia, Florida, Texas, California. You might get Louisiana, Alabama sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
And you got some Midwest kids that can play.
Yeah.
So
Midwest.
But yeah, I would say those
basketball country. That's right.
Right.
That's the rest of the Hoopers at.
So. Right.
Well,
yeah.
That's gay.
If I'ma start it, you know I'ma finish it. I'ma show all of you folk with the businesses. Walk